If you can't be in the field chasing gun dogs, the next best thing is talking about it.
Join Wade and Thomas as we discover the people, the places, and the birds, and of course, the gun dogs that make upland hunting our passion.
This is the Setter Tales Podcast. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 51. As you can kind of see, our layout's a little different tonight. We have an in-house guest, and we'll get to him, but we're going to do a little housekeeping here. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Highland Hideaway Hunting, down in Riverside, Iowa. Great place to get on some birds if you lack thereof, or hire one of us to come down and run our dogs with you. So great place. We just spent the weekend down there for the Heroes Hunt we've been talking about.
We did.
We
did. It was a good, we had about 30 officers, law enforcement officers there from all over many different states, and we spent the day, and they got to go out and hunt with guides like yourself. You were in the field. I was doing some administrative duties, so I didn't get to go in the field that day. But anyway, they got to go and chase some birds, and the other guys were on the pistol range hunting with the Special Forces guys that came in to help us out with that. So it was all pretty cool, and the weather was beautiful. We couldn't ask for a better day. You know, what was it, 50s maybe?
I think most? By the time our afternoon hunt had started, it was like 55, just a little bit of wind, and it was perfect conditions. They got some rain earlier that week, so it was a little wet, and was it just a dust bowl like where I'm at? Yeah. It's just dusty and dirty. But, you know, you guys had a different format this year. After we hunted, we came in, everybody got cleaned up. We had bags, we had, you know, fellowship. They had their own custom beer. They had beer donated, and it was all custom cans, really cool. And I had never stayed down there before, so it was cool to stay down there and hang out with all those guys and listen to stories, and then go hunting in the morning by myself or just run some dogs. But we need to get to our guest. He traveled a long way. We have Bryan Camper from Swift Rock Kennel. We'd like to thank him for taking the trip and coming on the show with us.
Well, thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, we're going to, this time of year, everybody's thinking about, you know, the hunting season coming. Obviously, that cool weather that we had a week or so ago kind of made everybody think about gun dogs, and seeing those dogs being taken in the field kind of gets everybody, you know, ginned up, ready to go. And I'm sure you, Bryan, see that same thing. People start thinking about their gun dogs when the season is about to show up, right?
Oh, yeah. They start calling they want them.
So you've had their dog all summer, getting them all squared away, and I know you've been doing this for what, 20 years? Tell us a little bit how you got involved in this and what you're doing now.
I started probably in 8th grade, and I think it was 8th grade. I read a book, and I just got into it for whatever reason. And then my freshman year, I saved my lunch money for a whole year to buy my first dog. I think my mom thought I had tapeworms because I would take money, I'd go to school, I'd come home and eat as soon as I got home from school. So I saved all that money, and I bought a dog, and I got it from a guy named Chris Myers out of Indiana. And he took me hunting the next year, and he's a lawyer and has a lot of bird dogs. And he asked me when we got all done if I would train his dogs from there on out. So about a freshman in high school, I started training dogs for him, and I think I was charging like $150 a month. But my mom bought all my dog food, paid all my vet bills, and I thought I was making a fortune. And I'd take 4 at a time, and as soon as I'd done with those 4, I'd take them back, and he'd switch them out. So I've been doing it ever since then. So that's kind of how I got started into it, and it's just kind of grown ever since. I think all my teachers, my parents, they thought I was crazy that this is what I was going to do for a living.
So obviously, you know, being in it 20 years or so, I'm sure you probably have dogs all over the country, and maybe even out of the country in some places.
Yeah, I don't think I have any out of the country. I think I've trained dogs for about every state. I know somebody just sent me a picture the other day of a dog I trained, and they moved to Hawaii. So there's one of my bird dogs over there.
Check that state off. That's pretty neat. And we talked about, you know, you got that first dog, but there were some special dogs that you kind of started building your kennel and kind of your line on, so to speak. Let's tell us a little bit about those dogs.
Well, I had my very first dog. Her name was Brian's Magnum Miss, and she was a very good dog. But all I did was wild bird hunt. I didn't trial, and I was very young. I think I only had 1 litter out of her. But after that, I had Swift Rock Copper, Swift Rock Smitty. There was a Swift Rock Dozer. There's one called Swift Rock Scout. His name's now Shag Time Scout, I think is what they switched it to. There was Swift Rock Smoky. I think they changed his name to the Woods Way Tomoka or something like that. So I've had a lot of different dogs, but that Swift Rock Smitty was probably my best dog I've ever owned. And he died at about 7 years old. So I had a lot of nice dogs coming behind him, but people had offered enough money. So I'd sell every one of them because he was young. Well, his liver and kidneys failed. So he just died out of the blue. I was getting him ready for a big national trial, and he just passed away.
Wow.
So, and he's probably the nicest dog I've ever owned, and I mean ever. He'd do anything I ever wanted. He could play any game I wanted him to play. Big, fancy, could run all day, and had a cannon for a nose, and I mean a cannon.
And now you were doing national shoot to retrieve stuff with him then?
Yep, national shoot to retrieve.
So explain to our listeners a little bit about what that is and kind of what there's a lot of different organizations out there that people hear about, and Nostra or National Shoot to Retrieve is one. Some of them are, I know some of the hunt tests are more, dogs meeting a standard, and then there's some that are more competitive where dogs going against a dog. So tell us a little bit about that organization.
Well, Shoot to Retrieve is kind of like I think they started to extend the hunting season, because most of those guys were wild bird hunters. Now most of them, they play Shoot to Retrieve, and they kind of do it as a profession. It's a hobby, but they only solely train those dogs for that. But they put 5 birds in the field. It's you and the dog against another handler and the dog. And each bird you find, you get scored 0 to 100, retrieve 0 to 100. You back one time at 0 to 75. So it's a little bit of a point system, but it's also a judgment calls also. You obviously have to beat your brace mate. The better your scores are, the more birds you find, it's better. I think it's a very good game. Some guys don't like it. Dogs that aren't quite as stylish, they still can win because they can find birds. But it is a game where if you have a decent bird dog and a gun and a pickup truck, you can go and be competitive. You don't have to have a big truck, trailer, horses, thousands of acres to run on. So it's kind of a working class game, I guess. It's kind of how I look at it.
But, you said it can get, guys make a living out of this, and you can maybe explain it better than I can, but these guys have figured out I can go go do this game and have a really good dog, and I can sell this dog, and people are going to buy into that. And, well, it's just a great bird dog, but hey, you can go win, win some ribbons and some trophies, and these guys have just made it's blown up. And, and with that, it probably comes the politics that the big field trial game entails, and you really have to be good at handling your dog and know what you're hauling over there to really be competitive.
Yeah, you have to know what you're looking at for the dog wise. You have to have one that is a bird finder. You turn them loose, you only get 30 minutes. So as soon as you turn him loose, he better be looking for birds. But, they also can teach him to track the four-wheeler now because they plan off the four-wheeler. But the ideal shoot to retrieve dog, he should be able to track. He should be able to find birds off of the track. I had a dog named Southern Bingo, and he'd only find them on the track. And he was a 2-time shoot to retrieve champion. But if he didn't find birds on the track, he was not going to leave the track. So he'd run the whole field and just keep running on the track and wouldn't come off of it and find birds. So, you could never take that dog wild bird hunting. You wouldn't ever find anything.
Yeah.
So there's a border there, a borderline of what you want to do. They got to track, they got to hunt, they got to want to handle. I wouldn't say there's a whole lot of politics in it. Like some of the horseback stuff in those games, they're fun. I really like them. I like the way they are. And, but you have to have everything to show up, and it can be a pretty pricey game to play.
Yeah. And, I grew up doing, how I started is kind of similar how you did. I didn't save my lunch money, but, just
awesome.
learning and learning and watching other people and looking at books and everything. And, I went into the dog or the coon and squirrel dog trials. And then, then I jumped on a truck with a retriever trainer, and we did all this, hauled, 20 dogs here and there and all over the country, and people were paying us to do that.
Yep.
And they just pick their dogs up, go hunting, and then come back, and you almost got to start over. So this is, knowing more about the National Shoot to Retrieve, it would maybe give people a better reason to maybe have their dogs a little longer, keep their dogs in shape, keep them trained up. So then when they bring them back to you, when there's none of that going on, you don't have to reset the whole dog most times.
Right. Yeah, sometimes we do, sometimes you have to make corrections. Even the dogs that trial a lot, they get trial wise, and they'll come back in because they'll start catwalking because they know there's no shock collars. There's, you can't really, make corrections in trials. So those dogs will even come unwound, even if, no matter how much you practice. And you hear a lot of guys say, oh, well, I'll tune him up during the week and he'll be ready for the weekend. It doesn't usually work out. If your dog's making a lot of errors in that game, you should probably quit for a month or two and work them and work them and work them and work them, and then show back up at those games. Otherwise, they get so trial-wise that you'll never get it out of them, the steps and the catwalking or ripping birds.
Yeah, and not to get too deep into this subject, but maybe explain a little bit to our viewers that when you say that they can come out of it, like he's kind of mentioned, is there's no collars. I mean, you can probably put like a TT15 on them or a T15 collar with no
Nope.
with no prongs, just a
regular,
no tracking collars, no nothing.
No nothing.
Okay.
They call it no training aids, so that they won't let them run with any kind of electronics. It's just your regular collar.
And they, we all know that dog is like, oh, I don't have a collar, I don't have to listen. What is some things, maybe a quick trick that somebody can do to practice that at home?
I don't know if there's any tricks to it. The way I train is just over and over and over. And I mentally beat it into their brain, I guess, that you just keep working and working and working and working it to where it's almost like muscle memory. Like if you're an athlete, you throw a baseball thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and even if your brain says, I'm going to make a mistake, your body says, nah, you're not going to make one. And that's kind of how I do like those trial dogs, is just the same thing over and over and over, to where their body will not let them make a mistake. Even if their brain says, I want to take this bird out, their body says, we're not moving. So there's really no trick to it. It's just a lot and a lot of hours and over and over. So
Now, do you see a difference in, I know in most of those events, they're using quail.
Yep.
So do you see dogs that kind of, when they smell that quail, they kind of like, oh, this is that game. I know what I'm supposed to do, as opposed to a pheasant that's moving on the ground trying to run from them, that kind of thing.
I think when you pull in the parking lot and they see all those trucks and all them dogs, they know it's the game then.
It gets a little louder in the truck.
And they know you're not going to be able to put that collar on me too,
yeah.
right?
Well, and you're sitting in that blind, and most of my dogs, I haven't had any that really sit in there and bark or whine. But some of the guys you run against, I've seen a lot of Brittany's and short hairs sit in the blind, and they squeal, and they just very vocal. And you turn them loose in the first 20 yards, they're screaming and barking. And I haven't seen it so much out of pointers and setters, but the Brittany's and the short hairs, they seem to be pretty vocal in the blind. But I think that's just them getting all wound up. Those guys probably go train every day. Those dogs probably don't do any of that. So I think you made a good point. When you show up there, they know it's ready to go.
Now, is that something you train to, sitting in a blind like that? Do you do any training like that, or is that just?
Not really. I don't do any of that.
Know.
The one thing I do is when I walk to the blind, if you ever go to one of them trials, you watch them, the dog's dragging the handler to the blind. And I learned it from a guy named Rick Meyer a long time ago. He had a dog called Honky Tonk Rack, and he'd walk him at his side. And I'm like, that dog would just prance and stay healed all the way to the blind. And I asked Rick, I said, why do you use that little bitty thin pinch collar? Or it wasn't pinch collar, but the little thin choke collars. And he said, well, I want to have total control. He said, you don't have control. If that dog's dragging you from your truck to the blind, that dog's already in control. So I started using that Delmer Smith command lead to walk him to the blind, just so that dog already knows that I'm in charge and he's got to work for me, and it seems to help. Some of them crazy pointers, it doesn't. You know, some of them English pointers I've had,
They're pretty hard-headed sometimes.
they are. They're really nice the first dozen times you run them. Then they think they're smarter than you
Yeah.
sometimes.
They say, I'm going to do it on my own.
Yep.
You know, that's one of the things we kind of want to talk about is kind of that behavioral thing, or these dogs that, you know, you got to get in their head. You got to make sure that they know they're hunting for you, not vice versa. And we talked about that a little on the phone the other day when we chatted. And I was asking you, okay, you get a dog. I bring you a dog tomorrow that you've never seen before, never had hands on. You know, what is your strategy, or what is your plan, if you will kind of walk us through what you're going to do with that dog from the very beginning?
Well, so if you bring a dog in, I usually do ask, you know, has he been on birds? You know, have you had him out in any cover? What did he act like on birds? Does he have any issues? Those type of things. And if he's a pretty raw dog to where he hasn't, you know, been out and about, but you know, there's no issues. That dog, the first, excuse me, the first week, I will take him with other dogs, put him on the chain gangs. He'll go with me every day. I'll run him with check cords. We'll put pigeons in launchers, or I'll fly birds out of my Johnny house, and we'll just let them young dogs. I'll usually run 2 or 3 of them together, and I'll just let them knock them, bump them, point them, chase them, catch them. It doesn't really matter. I just try to get them fired up and going with me, and me taking them to the birds. I think so they start thinking I'm a pretty great guy. I mean, you want them to connect with you, and that's kind of the first week. And you can start seeing, you know, if a dog's got a lot of point and a lot of back, you can advance pretty quick. And that's probably how we get started going. And you can start seeing, if he's a little bird shy, or, you know, there's just some dogs that never show up on the birds. So then you have to maybe physically check cord him into birds, or throw wing clip pigeons, you know, so he just gets really birdy. And some of them you just turn loose and they just point. I mean, they just know what's going on, but they're all different. I mean, they're all different.
So that's really I suppose that's the challenge, but it's also probably the fun of it, is trying to connect with that dog, each one being different.
Yeah.
I mean, even the few dogs that we've had, I mean, their personalities are all different. I mean, you know, some of them are easier. They want to please you more, or some of them are a little more hard-headed, stubborn, but you got to kind of connect and know how you're going to handle each one of them, and before you move forward.
Yeah, you can read a dog. I mean, I've been around them a long time, so I can read them pretty quickly. I live with dogs. I mean, it's kind of a presence thing. I go anywhere. I stand somewhere, and there's a dog there. He'll come over there and sit by me. I don't know what it is. It's just always kind of been that way. And there are a few dogs I don't connect with, but I don't know if they connect with anybody. I've had a few over the years that just never made it, and doesn't mean they weren't a dog, but they just weren't a bird dog. But it's very, very pleasing when you take a dog that has issues and you can correct those issues, and their owners are super happy. I mean, it is a great feeling. So,
yeah, and you know, I kind of did what you do, and just on a really small scale and part time, but. You know, you'll get a lot of people that'll bring their dog in and they'll say, "Oh, he can sit, he can heel, he'll go hunt." You can't really trust that, can you?
No. So, well, and the one I really hear is, and they mean well, their owners mean well, but they say his parents are champions, so he's gonna be, and that's not a true statement. I've seen a lot of dogs that are not champions. They're some of the finest bird dogs I've ever seen. I don't look at papers a lot. I do if, say, you bring me a dog, and then another year you bring me another one, and another year you bring another one. I'm like, boy, these are fine animals. I'll ask you then what they're out of. But so that's probably the biggest thing I see is some of the expectations. They've watched shows. They bring us 8-month. I like dogs 8, 10 months old to start them. I start them pretty young. And on 3 months, I can get a dog turning, coming, pointing back, and holding, shooting birds, everything but force broke. And, you know, if you want to stay wing shot, fall, kill, that takes a lot longer. But a nice started dog that's broke on pen raised birds, I can do it in 3 months. And, you know, a lot of guys' expectations, they've seen dogs on videos. These dogs are stay wing shot. Well, that can take 2 years, you know, and they want it done in 2 or 3 months. And so sometimes I think it's the expectations of the owners, because they haven't done it before and they haven't done, you know, every dog is different. You might get one that, you know, will do it, but most of them will not. So I think the owners have a higher expectation sometimes until they've had several dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell the difference.
Yeah, and you can't just have the same program for each dog. You have to cater. You may do the same thing, but you have to cater the way you do it in order to get what you want as an end result.
So I probably do the same program with almost every dog to a point. But the speed you do it, reading the dog, shoot, he was a little bit shy of a bird, or I shot the blank gun this time and he kind of turned around and looked at me. I better lay off for a week or so, maybe give him some wing clip pigeons to where he gets all pumped up again and then shoot a gun. So it's a lot of reading the dog, but I would say most of the time I can get about the same program. It's just sometimes you might have to pop pigeons another week, or when I'm wool breaking, maybe that dog can't take as much pressure, so you got to let off and give him another week or two in the end. But usually I can kind of do the same program. It's just you're reading how much time you're doing with
You
it.
just got to kind of cater to each individual, because some dogs don't like pressure at all.
No, not at all. Some dogs are very timid, and the dogs have never, and they're usually for more big kennels. They haven't had the exposure to all the other things, and sometimes my own dogs are a little bit that way. They're all bird dog, but guys, I want to have this a house dog. I'm like, well, he's never been in the house, so they are shy of those things. So, I'd say a dog's been in a big kennel environment. Lots of times they're a little bit more hesitant when you start doing different things with them.
Now, as your approach, we talked about softer dogs, and kind of explain what that is for people that are listening. When you say a softer dog, to me, I've been around German short hairs and setters. Obviously, I have setters, and I can see the difference in how they react to training. So, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, there's softer in every aspect of it. There's dogs that are soft. They don't like a kennel. They don't like a trailer. They don't like a dog truck. They don't like chain gangs. That's a different type of soft, one that you start applying pressure when you're training, and they're a little bit soft. That's a different type of pressure, or a different type of soft. Some dogs are just super bold, and I've seen most of the dogs. If you ever see a bird dog in a kennel, and I say that they just go crazy, and they're doing hot laps, barking, bouncing off the fence. You turn that dog loose, most of the time, they're your closest working dog for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, and I'd call that a softness. That's a mental softness of some sort. They almost like a separation anxiety softness. So there's so many different things of soft. Some dogs can't take physical pressure when you're doing force fetching. That's a softness. Some dogs are, and it's not really a softness, but they'll fight you all the way through. But it is a softness because they don't want to learn your way. They want to, it's just a mental challenge, but it's still a softness. Some guys would say it's hard, but I'd say it's just a little mentally soft. So
where do setters kind of fit into that whole? I mean, I'm assuming there's a broad spectrum of them as well, as far as what kind of soft they are. But
yeah, your setters, slow. They're probably a little bit more mature. They mature a little slower. They still point, they back, but they'll play. They'll do a little bit more playing, tagging when you're training. They want to be a bird dog, but they drag that puppy stuff a little bit longer into their training. I'd say they're middle of the road for that type of, for a bird dog. Pointer and a German short hair are usually your quickest, boldest, mature in age, or, mental maturity is the fastest on those two breeds. Wire hairs are pretty bold. Setters are, like I say, in the middle.
You kind of have a liking for setters, I know.
Yep.
Why is that? Why do you like those setters?
Well, probably because that one I saved my lunch money for is what I bought. And the one thing I'll say about a setter is they have a memory like an elephant. You teach them something one time, they'll remember it for the rest of their life. But it better be right, because if you do it wrong, he'll also remember that for the rest of your life. They see something in the floor and that jumped out and scared him. I bet he'll never walk through that same part of the floor again. And I love it, because once a setter's broke, he's broke. I don't have to go do a lot of fine tuning all the time. You get him in shape, And he seems like he just remembers everything. The marble doesn't seem to stick on the other side of the brain. You know, when you're hollering and screaming and, you know, trying to get him to handle, a setter just seems to remember. And they're a little bit more pleasing and easy to go with.
Now, one of my top dogs in my kennel, my female, when she was a puppy, we took her on a walk, just a puppy walk in the CRP, no guns, no pressure, but she just had that natural instinct right away. A bird walks out on a mowed path, and they have a stare down. Bird kind of walks, approaches her, takes up flight. Now, every time we're hunting hard and somewhere and you get somewhere that's got a mowed path, she immediately stops out, locks up for about 3 seconds, checks for a bird, and goes. And that happened at 8 weeks old.
Yeah,
And that's all it took.
She's just hoping it happens again.
And she checks every time. Now, obviously I say no, but you know, she did it the other day at the reserve and there was a bird there.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do you correct that when she's right? But she still remembers that from being just a little, couldn't even jump up on the couch yet, puppy, and that stuck in her brain.
Yeah, and it'll stick there probably forever. I mean, there's really no correction to that.
No.
She's not doing nothing wrong, I don't think, but she'll remember it forever. And I don't know why they do that. And the setter's pretty well known that way. They're just wired that way. I love that part of them.
Yeah, and you know, and you kind of said a little bit about, you know, how setters are soft. Do you notice, and I've noticed with different lines I've had and then with the line I'm having, there are certain probably lines of these dogs that may take a little more pressure, and then ones that you really got to ease off on. And
yeah, and I think it's the line of dogs. And I think we're improving them all the time. I try to raise a setter that has a mentality of a pointer as far as the maturity. I like a setter that I can have turning, coming, pointing, back, and holding, woe broke, killing birds, or starting to work the stated flush without the gun when they're about a year old. And I breed that way because that's what I want. I don't want to wait 2-3 years and find out, well, this one's just not quite going to make it for me. So I breed that way. Now, some of your older lines of dogs, they need more time. I do mess with some frozen semen dogs that are from, you know, quite a while back, and you can tell that there is a difference. They're a little slower maturing, not all of them, but I do think also some of the reasons is all the training things we have now, they didn't have that back then. So they had to wait. Or I don't think we have to wait as long. I think those dogs are smarter than we give them credit. And I will push a dog pretty hard. So that's just my opinion. I don't want to raise a bunch of dogs. I got to wait till they're 6 years old.
yeah,
You know, I just don't. So that's why I breed that way. I want a dog and do it all too. And he's still going to make mistakes and do puppy stuff, but he's got to have all the stuff there. So that's kind of what I breed for. And I think that's what most guys are breeding for anymore.
yeah, and it's not easy. I found that out when you want to go and really make a good cross. You research and you read and you look at pedigrees, and you're not too close, you're not too far away, and you know, you mentioned the Oscar dog, and the Scout dog. You know, I went back. I have a lot of Scout on one side, but I went back to his relatives because I like what I saw. I like what I've worked with the past 15 years on this line of dogs that I'm working, and it's just, you got to make that long thought ahead. You know, you said even semen, you're bringing stuff in that you liked from back then, but you're still moving ahead with your breeding program, making sure you're getting the right dog that you want.
Yes. You know, like some of the things that I look for, and I think in the dogs you're messing with, I think some of Sean Derrick's or whatever, a lot of nice tails, big dogs, fancy. That's what I look for. I don't breed paperwork so much. You know, it does help.
Yeah.
I mean, you cross them up, it helps. But I do breed style of a dog to a style of dog, and I call it cookie cutters. I want cookie cutter puppies. When I raise a litter of puppies, I want all 8. Color-wise, don't matter, but they better be the same size, be the same conformation, all learn the same way. And it doesn't happen. But when you start finding it where it happens, you stick with it.
Yeah.
So if, you know, that Oscar dog, he was a son of Tacoma Mountain Sunrise, and I sold him to a fella, and I can't remember his name, and then another guy had a few puppies out of him and did pretty well with them. Oscar, I think I got when he was like 4 or 5 years old, and he was hard-headed. He was a lot of dog. That's all that I remember about him. I didn't have him that long. Gosh, I can't remember the fellow's name that bought him, but he ended up with him. So, but I have like that Smitty dog. I bred him, I don't know, 8 times. I think he produced 15 champions. Some shooting dog, a few mainly shoot to retrieve, but he produced what he was, but now his offspring are not. So I think I bred to 4 of his sons. There's one over here in Iowa that produces pretty nice ones. His name's Toby. Dave Gaffney owns him.
Yep.
And he's out of my Smitty dog. And now that one, he throws bird dogs. Now they all throw bird dogs, but Smitty was 65 pounds.
Yeah.
And his puppies were all that big, but his sons don't throw that, and I just don't care for it. So I've moved away from it. And so that's kind of, I have a female out of him named Splash, and she does throw nice dogs. A friend of mine, David Cates, is running a female out of him, or out of that Splash dog in the big invitational MBHA trial, I think next month, I think it is. And now she's a super fine animal. But the Smitty kind of was one generation, and then it just kind of went away.
So when you go back and you try to, the first setter I had, Sweet Lou, I mean, you keep thinking I can recreate that. Well, I don't know that you can. You may get close, but
I think that's, and I also think that, that Smitty dog, he meant something to me. So you think every one of them is going to be that good. Well, and they might be, but maybe you're rushing it, or you just have a different vision in your mind of what that dog's doing that you think he should be doing. So I do think some of that comes into play when you're breeding. But like I say, I don't follow a real tight line. I look at the dog, the conformation of the dog. I like the size. I like a straight tail. So I do breed that, for some of that too. And there's certain lines that throw better tails.
Yep.
But every line of dog has some take. You give and take, and
So you like the big ones? You like them big?
Oh yeah, I like a 60-pound male.
There you go.
Yeah, and that serves well for I'd like them a little bigger, but I seem to get the little pocket rockets. But I love them.
You like the speedsters.
Just go like I want you to go as hard as you can. Doesn't matter how big the dogs you're running with. I want you to go hard, and then when it's time to stop and point, you stop and point and produce what I want.
Right.
And everybody's got a personal preference. I had puppies that guys called. I want a small one. Okay, and then one guy, he's horseback all the time. He's like, I want the biggest toad you got.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And I took the 2 biggest ones of litter, and he goes, well, that one's not big enough. I'll take that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The horseback guys want them big, because when they stand up, you want them to show.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to see something out.
What's the biggest setter you've had?
That Smitty dog was probably the biggest. He's 65 pounds in shape. But 50-pound males are, about what you average. I do not own a female under 50 pounds. I just don't. And I think that, most dogs, my opinion, is when you breed them, they get 51% of their traits and stuff from their mom and 49 from the male, just because they live with the moms. But if you start breeding small females to big males, then you don't get that cookie cutter litter that I'm looking for.
It'll be a mixed bag in that litter of,
And I've got some dogs. I got a dog named Jet. He's about 13. And he's out of Shadow Oak Bow and Aaron Skydancer, and he produces some nice puppies, but you'll get that oddball litter out of him. And he's a big, powerful animal. He's getting some age on him now, but.
So I'm going to throw you a real good question now. Females and males, which would you rather have in your kennel?
Depends on what I'm doing.
Okay.
If I was going to just guide hunts and wild bird hunt, I'd probably go with all females.
Why?
They train out earlier, and they're more consistent, in my opinion. Male dog, though, on a good day, there's no dog that's ever going to touch him. But the next day you'll wonder what dog that is. And there are males more up and down. If I'm guiding hunts and just wild bird hunting, I would go with females. They want a little bit more cooperative, and they don't like I say, they're just more consistent.
On the training side, is there any difference in when you're training the female versus the male?
Yeah, the females are a little bit more pleasing, you know, and they do train a little faster, I think, but they mature faster. Sometimes you look at those big males I like, and he's only 6 months old. Well, he looks like a year-old dog.
Yeah.
So you lose track of that. But where females, they just seem to mentally grow faster.
So what I find interesting, I think you have, what, 50 dogs right now that you're working at any given time?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, so that's a lot of dogs. And then when you're working those dogs and you're making those observations that we've been talking about, you know, the different types of soft they are, and you know, if you're blanking over them, any kind of reaction and that thing. How do you keep track of that? Do you journal that as you go, or do you just keep it in your head somewhere?
Bird dogs are about the only thing I can keep track of. My wife's sitting over there. If you ask her, I don't remember anything else. I can remember about everything about a bird dog.
So you can remember that dog from that one out of that 40. You can remember that's the dog that I got to give him another day or a week before I shoot over him. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and my client dogs are very easy, except I work them every day except for Sundays. So they're on that truck every day. So, you know, it's almost like working with a partner at work every day. You know how to work with them. And it's the same thing with an animal that, you know, they get on that truck and they know what they're doing, and I know what they're doing.
I'm guessing you give some kind of update or report to the owner at some point. Is that something that you do by phone, or do you put that in an email and say, here's what we've accomplished in the last month?
I try to do it.
Send me your check.
Yeah, you usually have to remind them of that. But I do a lot of stuff anymore on social media, and I'm not a huge fan of it, but I try to post once a week of all the client dogs I'm working. But I've learned how to multitask. I can train a dog, drive my Kawasaki mule, text, and take phone calls all at the same time. So all day long.
I do know that for a fact, because I think when I was talking to you last time, you were on a mule or you were headed somewhere or loading dogs.
Yep. So I do, and, you know, a lot of the clients, they want to know, and I think, you know, they call a lot and text a lot, and I try to respond as much as possible, but some days you just can't. But mainly social media pictures, or if you don't hear from me, we don't have a problem.
Yeah.
If you hear from me, we got a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not that I try to avoid, you know, or not talk to the owners, but you work 30 dogs a day, clean kennels, pressure wash, feed, have a family. You just can't get to it all. And if I was on the phone with 30 clients in a day, I probably wouldn't work any dogs. So that's kind of why I do the social media stuff.
The to and from the field to the kennel is full of phone calls, usually.
It is, but I don't have service.
Oh, even better.
I have no cell service once I leave my training field.
Sure you do.
Till I get to about my driveway. I don't have, you know, very good service out there. So otherwise, yes, it would be a lot of phone calls. Text messages is probably the most, you know, I do a lot of those, not when I'm driving, but.
So anybody that's looked at your website, what I was kind of fascinated about was your kennel building that you have. And obviously I know that that's expanded over the years. That probably wasn't what you started with back in the day, but tell us a little bit about your kennel building and how you have incorporated some things to kind of make it more efficient in what you need to get done every day.
So actually, I designed that kennel building when I was a freshman in high school. So I actually built it all by myself, pretty much. Had a few guys help, but I did it all under a roof so I could do chores after dark, because I do all my feeding the dogs after dark, just so they're done being run and they're back home. So I have lights. It's got good ventilation. The sides come up on it, you know, halfway there. We got lights. You go down the center. I have hanging feeders on all the doors that are aluminum, and we wand that. It's like a disinfectant deal. We do that every day. But so we can feed. We open the door. We feed right there. All my houses are hanging on chains, so the dogs aren't bouncing off them or jumping on top of them. They get in them, and that's it. Otherwise, you get dogs that just want to bounce and bounce and bounce and jump on top, get hurt. And then we shovel everything out the back. It's got a drain tile all the way around it and drains. and then we clean everything up down the center aisle, or the back aisle has walkways about 3 feet, so we can clean that up pretty easy. And that's just pretty much what it is in there.
So chore time takes
3 hours.
3 hours.
Yep.
That's feeding and cleaning and
Yep.
power washing and doing everything that you need to do.
I shovel kennels every morning. We pressure wash every night and feed. We put all fresh. I have small water buckets, so that way, water just doesn't sit stagnant. Another reason it's not in the direct sun. I wish the concrete was in direct sun, for the disease, but it also doesn't build mold on water buckets and stuff like that. But so yeah, 3 hours, shovel, clean, scrape, pressure wash, and feed. And that's not if you have to change bedding, put new bedding in. We change bedding every couple of days in the winter. So
What are you using for bedding?
I use straw, cedar, and pine. Summertime, like that right now, I'm using pine. In summertime, I use cedar with the bugs, and then in the winter we use straw because but straw breaks down so fast.
Right.
I wish we had something better, but it just seems to work pretty well. If you can get a good marsh hay, it seems to be decent.
So for our listeners out there, he said the cedar bedding, fleas hate it.
Yep. Ticks
Ticks
fleas,
hate it.
Flies.
That's kind of why he does that. And are you able to drive your rig right into the kennel?
I can. It's very, very tight, but I just don't. When we load dogs in the morning, I really don't teach heel, but I do from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I park my rig sits at the end of the building, and I have an aisleway right down the center. So we walk everything down, and they jump in the truck.
That was my biggest regret when I built mine, is just because of money, that I can't just drive my truck right in and have a drive-through. And eventually someday that's going to be the best way I want to do it. That way the dog truck, the hunting truck stays in there with them, and you can load in, load out, whether you're going at night. My big advantage now is, I just let them out and let them run. They usually just go to the truck because they know, okay, we're going out the front door. That means we're going to work. And I have a sandburr minefield around the house. You can't kill them. They don't go away. But now the dogs know they can't go this way because the highway's there, and that's a hot zone. I can't go that way because the sandburrs. So that's the only thing that saves me.
You got to train them to just
Yeah,
go in one
they
direction.
kind of just train themselves that way. But yeah, and having that comfortable environment with your kennel, people say, oh, they just got them in a building. These dogs are working. When they get home, it's time to feed. It's time to rest. These dogs have been working all day. They're just not staying in that kennel.
Nope. Every dog gets worked. It depends on what I'm working on, but I would say every dog runs at least 30 minutes to an hour. It depends on what I'm working on. And then when they're not doing that, we put them on a chain gang, and they're out in the sun, or I have a shade tree that I put them under, but they're out in the fresh air and stuff. So they're not just sitting in those kennels. I mean, that'd be probably a very boring life, I would assume. The only thing I would say with that kennel, if I would have had more money when I did it, I'd have put heated floors in everywhere so that concrete would stay the same temperature. And you get the humid days and whatever, that concrete, the condensation goes up and down. And we wash and we wash and we wash. And there's some days you're just like, holy cow, why are these dogs dirty?
Yeah.
So I think if you'd have heated concrete, it would keep all that condensation down on that concrete and stay the same temperature. In the wintertime, them dogs come out and pace, and they'll heat that concrete up. So it changes, it fluctuates. That's all, that'd be one thing I would ever recommend is heated concrete.
Yeah, I never did that, and I think the condensation in the summer is worse and dirtier than. They go outside. Obviously, with snow blows, you can't keep up with it constantly, so they're out there. But that condensation in the winter the summer coming up through that concrete, no matter how many layers of sealant, no matter how much paint you put on it, it's still going to sweat, and they make a mess.
Yep, and I even I have insulation underneath my concrete. We put the blue foam board down when we did it, and that don't help either. So there's no good answer there. But in the wintertime, I think it just, the air is drier.
Mm-hmm.
A dog will dehydrate in the winter way faster than he will in the summer. The same thing with your concrete.
So your doors that go up, is that kind of like on a garage door kind of a system, or
No, it's
just hinged?
It's just a tarp situation is what it is.
Okay.
So, and then there's entry doors. So it just knocks the wind down. It's probably when you have the tarps on there in the winter, it's probably 10 degrees warmer in there. But, a good bird dog needs to be acclimated to the weather, in my opinion.
They got good dry bedding in those dog houses in there.
We change it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I everybody goes, "Oh, your dogs can go outside during the day?" I said, "Yeah, they got doors, they can go outside." I said, "Well, do you have heat in there?" "Yeah." But I don't keep it up at 70.
No.
If I keep it over 45 degrees, them dogs, even if it's 30 below outside, they go out and lay in the concrete.
Yeah, I had a different building before. It was like a salt shed that we built, and the concrete is on the outside and the boxes are on the inside. And I had an old dog named Bill, and he would literally drag his bedding out in the winter and put it on the concrete and sleep on it every day. And it'd be 20 below zero, and he would drag straw out of there and lay on it in the concrete. And I thought, that's crazy, but apparently it didn't bother him none.
No, I had a dog. It was cold, and I thought, why has this dog got sores on her back? Just one leg had sores on that. Why has she got these hot spots? I couldn't figure out. Went to the vet, and she goes, "Well, that just looks like a burn." I said, "Well, what? There's nothing to burn herself on." Well, I had the kennel turned up to 65, so I went out there in the middle of the night one time. It was 30 below just to check.
Yeah.
And she was laying outside, and her butt was freezing.
A little frostbite.
She was freezing her butt to the concrete because when I went out there and scraped kennels that next day, there was fur on the concrete.
Yep.
So it's like crank it down to 40.
Was that a German short hair?
It was actually a lab, but the black hair gave it away. But these setters, they got a little more hair. Obviously, you have all different kinds of breeds, but they're all gonna, once you get them acclimated to being an all-weather dog, you just keep the air comfortable, keep them dry, and they're gonna be happy.
Yeah, and in the wintertime too, when it's cold, I usually up their food by about a quarter cup, half cup, to sustain them. It depends on, English Pointer is the hardest ones to keep in the winter. I don't know why. They metabolize food so much faster. So you really have to feed them a lot more. Where a setter, I really think that they slow down. Their metabolism, I think, slows down in the winter. I've had more setters gain weight in the winter than any other dog I've ever had at the same ration. So a lot of times the setters, I'll back them off food in the winter, and I don't know why that is. If it's something in their brain or what makes them do that.
So in the wintertime, do those dogs create enough heat inside the kennel so your water buckets won't freeze up, or do you?
Oh,
have
no.
Do you have them on some type of
we take them out,
thermostat or what?
Oh, no, we take them out and put them in the office every day.
Oh, man.
And dump them, water. We feed wet, and then we dump buckets probably 2 times a day. Wow. So my office is heated, and we just set them on the floors, get the outside of them, and dump them. So it does create a lot of work. So I don't know if there's any way to have that many heated buckets.
That'd be a lot of buckets.
Be a lot of power.
Yep, and you don't want. So everything I have there's no metal, there's no wood, there's no plastic in my kennels. It's all metal, stainless steel buckets, aluminum feeders. I mean, so they don't chew on anything or destroy anything. In Illinois, we kind of have to have it that way.
That's state regulation.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, no wood, nothing chewable, no rust.
Probably we're going to talk about a little bit. I know you get some dogs that we talked about that. You get some dogs that have some issues that come in there, but there's got to be the one dog that was probably the most challenging that you've had. And how did that go for you?
There's been a lot of them been pretty challenging. The latest one I can say is I had a Brittany, and he just didn't have a lot of bird drive. He handled well. He pointed, but he had no intensity. Wouldn't really chase birds. So you just got to keep building and building that. Some guys call it prey drive. Some guys call it bird drive. I call it fire desire. He didn't have it for the birds. So you got to keep going, and sometimes you just have to live with the not quite so intense. And you hope I thought when I started shooting birds for him, he'd really build up. And he just kind of stayed the same, like, yep, I'm doing my job, but
this is all you're going to get.
This is all you're going to get. And, I explained it to the owners. I told them before they picked it up, I told them about a month in, I said, hey, this dog needs more fire and desire. And they said, we don't really care because we just want him to be a hunting dog. We would go to a few clubs and that type of thing. Now, if he'd have been a trialer, I bet you the opinion would have been different. He'd had to get sold to a hunter or gone to a hunting, just a preserve type situation.
How many dogs do you get in a year on that somebody wants you to just force fetch? And is that one of your bigger?
Wool breaking's probably my biggest. I probably will break more dogs because I do it for all venues. I do a lot of force fetching. I probably just force fetching itself. I probably do 30 dogs, but I probably train 50 to 60, sometimes 100 dogs a year, and I probably force break all of them.
Okay.
So if you add that on, I probably do more force breaking.
How long does that usually take? I mean, I know it's different for each dog, but
so some guys, I work so many dogs and I'm gone. So I'll work them in the morning before I leave. And sometimes if I can do it in the afternoon, but I would say 2 months is how I do it. And I used to do the toe pinch. I switched from the toe pinch and I just use a collar only and I nick them. I don't continuous. And you just bump them until you grab that dummy. It's a lot more to it than that. But what I've noticed since I switched to that way of doing it, they're happy when they see me. When I was doing the toe pinch, you go to the kennel, they're like, I don't want to go out there. Now, they come out, their tail's wagging, you go to the kennel, tail's wagging, you put them on the training table. And the other thing is I don't get frustrated. I'm not sweating. All I got to do is hit the button.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not pulling and setting the dog back.
trying to have your hands full, trying to do different things. And
In that toe pinch, if you really think about it, you're pulling the string this way to the dummy. So you're pulling the dog in the string, and what's the dog going to do when you're pushing him this way?
Pull back.
He's going to go back. With the collar, there's none of that.
You got full control of that dog.
Yep.
And if that dog's not getting it, you can take that dog to the dummy.
I don't even have my hand on the collar.
Yeah.
I put on a pinch collar. You put a pinch collar on the neck. They walk up and down the table. I tie them off to the end, and I just start putting that dummy in their mouth. Once they let you, and then I'll start nicking that collar, and then as soon as that dummy's in their mouth, I quit bumping the button, and it's low. And then when you want to move to the next thing, you take that dummy and you rub it across the front of their teeth, and you just keep rubbing it, keep bumping. Eventually, he'll open his mouth, and as soon as he opens his mouth, you quit bumping him. Next thing you know, he'll be reaching and grabbing it, and he just doesn't fight you as much. Once in a while, they'll get a little confusion, and you got to go back. But with the string and the toe pinch or the ear pinch, my hands I thought were pretty strong, and I could never get the ear pinch to work ever. But the toe pinch, I just had a lot of dogs sulk and fight me, and it makes your day miserable. That's not the last thing you want to go home and do before you go to bed.
yeah, make dogs mad at you.
Yep. And you get fired up and frustrated too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My first one was a guy says, "You want to come train?" I went to school, did all the schooling for dog training, behavioral icing and everything, and went to this trainer. He goes, "I'm gonna teach you how to force fetch a dog." And we use the collar method. And I said, "Well, why don't you do ear pinch or toe pinch?" And these were all trial labs. He goes, "You gonna swim out in that pond and pinch that dog's ear if he doesn't?" I'm like, "No." He says, "You gonna pinch his toe? You got to get in the water."
Right.
No, he goes, "Then you're gonna do it this way, and it's gonna make it easier. The dog's gonna respect you more, and you don't have to get wet."
Yeah. Well, and they say, and I do believe this, is that you have 3 to 5 seconds to make a correction, or
Right.
you might as well not.
Yep.
The guys that get all frustrated and yell at their dog once he comes to them or whatever, it's too late.
Yeah.
The dog doesn't understand. You need to correct that right then.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the collar is working. You shoot that bird and you don't pick it up, I can go right to bumping him. And you're not hot, and it's not hurting them. It just gets their attention. They're like, oh, makes their brain click. They reach down, pick it up. And as soon as you bump them one time, you've been doing this, their head instantly goes down looking, where's that dummy or the
Which
bird?
makes sense, because if you're doing the other method and that dog refuses out there in the field, there's really not a lot you can do about it.
I was bit a lot doing the toe pinch, because a lot of times you would go towards the dog to grab that string, and they're coming at you. So you reach down to grab that string. Well, their mouth's about right here when you reach down. And I got bit in the legs a lot, like in the thigh, because you go grab that, it just instantly boom. You know, in their mind, it was, I got to shut that pain off.
So I'm biting whatever's there.
Whatever's there, and it hurts. So I don't, and that's why I switched. I really like this new method.
So when you go on the table, you obviously have to push that to the ground.
Yep.
So, you know, for the people listening, you just don't put them up on a table and say, oh, they're force fetch. You got to go to the ground, and it's almost a restart because it's a whole different area.
Yeah. Everything you go to, even if you got them, you know, everything you do is a new level of training on the force fetch. And you go to the ground, sometimes they just act like they have no idea, or they spit the dummy out a lot. That's one thing with this method. I do make them walk around with it a lot to hold it more. And if they spit it out, I just go right to nicking them, so I pick it right up. But and then when you go shoot birds, it's different. I mean, go to frozen birds, it's like you're starting over sometimes. It's very odd why it changes. And then there's other dogs, they just go right through it.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you say fetch,
Yep.
you know, and you kind of know, you know, my experience, you kind of know when you figured out, okay, they're ready to advance. It's when before you even grab that dummy off the table, they're going for it.
Yeah, when they're reaching for the dummy right away, they're ready. I mean,
And there are times I always thought if I got bit on the hand before I got the dummy up to where they could get it, like, okay, we can move on. You know, it's not a bad bite. It's just like, they're going for it.
They just want something in their mouth.
They want something.
But yeah, and I'll tell you, the worst dog in the world to force fetch is a female setter. I've force broke so many dogs,
agree with that.
and they are the hardest. Wire hair is super easy. Short hairs are easy. Pointers are pretty easy. Male setters are pretty easy. But yeah, female setter, for whatever reason, they shut down the most. Even you don't even understand why they do it. You know, everything's going great, and then one day they're just like, nope. So, but you just got to work through it. But yeah, female setters are the worst. I force break a lot of them.
Yeah, I had a guy tell me about a Chesapeake that was pretty bad.
I heard they're a little. I've never did any of those, but I heard they're a little aggressive.
Yeah, he'd chain him to a tree, and he'd come out wanting to eat him, and he'd have to, that chain would get tight, so then he could actually work him. But once he got through that point, it was fine.
Yeah, they say they're one of the best retrieving dogs. Once they're broke, they are super good retrieving dogs.
That's why you don't see a lot of field champion Chesapeakes in these big competitions, because nobody wants to do it.
Oh yeah.
So on your force fetch, then those sessions usually are how long?
10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
A lot of times I'll set a timer because sometimes guys you'll overdo it.
Okay.
Because you're like, oh, this is going good, or this is going bad, so I'm going to keep going. And I feel like if you have a set time, boom, and you do it. And I do everything in 3s and 7s. So I will have them, if I have their head tied off to that thing, I'll make them retrieve that dummy 3 times and spit it out 3 times, or I'll have them do it 7 times. And if they lick their lips from front to back or yawn, ears, breathing changes, they kind of let in or give in, I feel like they're getting it. Or they start looking at you a lot, and then they're pairing up with you, and you're getting somewhere. And I think I learned that 3s and 7s, I think, from Delmer Smith. And I thought, this can't be right. And I've done it ever since, and it works. And you'll see
3s and 7s.
When I woe break, you really see it. I use the woe post, and that 3rd time you do it, you'll see them. They'll yawn, but it's not just like this. It's
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
and they get down, and they'll just kind of look at you. Or if they lick their lips, it comes out to the side like this, they're getting it. If their tongue just keeps coming out like this, they're nervous. And if their ears change, they're nervous. So there's some different deals with it, but I don't know. I've gotten some of it from people, and some of it I think is just from doing it over and over and over, and you see what really works.
Now, scenario here, and this is something I got taught, but when we were force fetching, and the guy goes, "I'm gonna come walk." Once he taught me how to, he just kind of walked from the distance. He had 20 other dogs were working, and one day I went up there, sat a dog up that I'd had issues with. It was obviously a slower go than the rest, and I grabbed the dummy, and that dog reached up, grabbed that dummy, and he yelled across the lawn and goes, "Put that dog in the kennel." You didn't have to fight nothing with that dog today. That dog immediately did what you wanted, put it in the kennel for the day, and let it go think. Tomorrow, it's going to be a fun day. You're just going to throw bumpers. We're going to take her swimming, do all this. Do you do that kind of stuff? If you see a dog you've had issues with, and it's a new day and they just get it right away, do you just like, okay, you're going to go sit in your kennel. I'm going to let you think about this for 24 hours. Look at all the work we have to do. And you come to this point right away.
Yeah, I do a lot of that. You set them up for success, not for failure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a successful thing. And you're like, why push it any further that day? Because the day before you might have had to get on them because you don't want to put them away. I'm not a big fan of putting them away when it's really bad session. You try to end on something positive. So yes, I do a lot of that. Another thing I do a lot of, and so my trailer at my training grounds has ramps. And you see a lot of these trainers doing like obstacle courses and stuff with a dog. You have a bad session with a dog, and you've taught that dog to walk down the trailer, up and down them things. You go up there, you have him do it a few times, pet him, get him happy. He forgets about everything. He forgot about the bad session. He's happy-go-lucky, put him on chain gang. Now, before I started doing that, you have a bad session out there, you come back, put him on chain gang. He sulk, next day, come out and be the same thing. So I found that with all these, and it's all from the guys just doing all the, like the Malinois stuff and all those things, it makes that dog's brain think about something different. And if you can put something positive with it after something negative, they forget about the negative and they move on to the positive. So when you're training any type of dog, I think if you want to have success, you want it to be positive. No matter how you end, you want it to be positive. Yep. If you're having a bad go with that and you're fighting him, I won't put him away till I'm the winner.
Yeah.
And, and it can be something simple as, yep, he just grabbed that dummy. He's wagging his tail. He ran up and down the table faster, just in a good mood. Okay, I'm done. I'll put him away.
Yeah, and it sometimes just takes, okay, he's struggling with this, and I'm doing nothing but making it worse and making it no fun for him. Even if it's walking over to the truck and having him load up successfully into the truck, boom, there's a positive.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be this major ordeal. It just has to be something that they're confident in doing. They do it successfully. They get a pet. They get put away.
Yep. Training bird dogs is probably the most simple thing in the world. We make it more complex than what it should be. So yeah, you're right on. If you can put them away happy, it's a lot better.
Now you do a little hunting too when you can, right? You don't get a lot of chance to do that, but
I love to bird hunt. It's just finding the time to do it after you work. I take dogs in March and I work 6 days a week until about December. So I do sneak out. I go to Iowa. I go to Kansas a little bit. I think we're going to my friend Rich wants to go to North Dakota this year, and I'd like to go with him. We'll just see if it works out.
Now, you obviously have plenty of people doing chores.
No.
Helping.
No? You're looking at him. Yeah.
So when you take off, you got to take everybody with you.
No, I do have some people that will help when I'm gone, and I'll take, it depends on where if I have clients' dogs, I'll take them. If I'm guiding hunts or doing something like that, I'll use a guide, the client's dogs on it if they're ready. So, the more birds, the better. And if you're guiding, you can pay 100% attention to the dog. I don't have to worry about shooting the bird. I don't have to worry about trying to, really flush the birds, but I can still look at the dog. But yeah, no, I'll usually take 10 dogs if I go somewhere wild bird hunting. It's almost like a vacation, sort of. So unfortunately, my wife or my kids and I have a guy that does pressure wash kennels for me, and he'll do some chores. So I do. For me to go away at 10 dogs is a vacation.
10 dogs. Wow. Well, it gives you some dog power, and I suppose your hunting partners maybe have dogs too.
Yeah.
You'd be the guy that, if somebody ought to pal with, a guy that has access to the dogs you have. Plus, you take care of them and you bring them to the hunt. That'd be perfect. So Iowa, you hunt some. Obviously, you're hunting. I think you told me you hunt over kind of central part of the state some.
Yeah, around the Iowa City area, Coralville, over in there. I had a family member that lived down there. We bird hunt around that area a lot. This year we went up to, last year we went up to like Northwest Iowa, and we did very, very well there. We do just hunt walk-in areas, not much private ground. It's hard to get on private ground.
It is.
But we hunt a lot of walk-in. We had great success.
Do you find that, I don't know, you kind of go later in the year after opening weekend and kind of miss all the amateurs, so to speak?
Yeah, you miss the locals. I tried, I don't want to fight people for places to hunt. And I'll usually only hunt with 2 or 3 guys. You know, I don't like a big group of guys. And we'll put 2, 3 dogs on the ground, and we'll cover a lot of ground. We'll hunt 2 hours and switch dogs. And
Especially if you got a truck full of dogs,
Yeah.
you don't want to leave it in a populated area where people are going to mess. You know,
I shouldn't jinx myself. I've never ever had a problem.
right?
I never have, and everything over here.
That's always at the back of my mind though when I'm out running and I got dogs in the truck. It's like, see, I can't see the truck anymore.
I just feel more bad that dog. Sometimes I'm like, I wish this dog was with me and not that one. You know?
That too. This one needs to go back.
Plus, you're thinking to yourself, you know, you're kind of like the baseball manager. You're looking at your lineup card, thinking who I haven't gotten the game yet, you know. And
Yeah, I try to put an A with a B. I put a major player with somebody that's coming up. That's what I try to do. So, you know, wild birds are a lot different than put and take birds. And, you know, I've had some dogs that they just know where to find them. You know, them wild birds are so much different. And they know how to find them. They know how to handle them. And then I've had other dogs that are way better on pen-raised birds, but they're, you know, not very good on wild birds and vice versa.
Have you ever had where you started a pup where they didn't give a hoot about planted birds and pigeons, but were successful as a wild bird dog?
Well, that bingo dog I was talking about, he would literally poop on pigeons. He would, you know, we started working on pigeon. He would literally stop, turn around, and take a crap on a pigeon and take off.
Oh.
So he was very, very hard to break. So, you know, he only wanted those, but yes.
So my female, she's 4 now. When her first 6 months, you know, she was a puppy for a while, and then we got the collar conditioning and the handling. I planted birds all the time. It's like nothing. She just didn't care. She'd smell them and then run past them and then go hunt, you know. And so I just put her on wild birds, and that's all it took. Now you can put her on planted birds and pigeons and everything else, but it was just like a complete opposite of how you would. It was weird. I thought I had a dud. You know,
might have been the man scent. You know,
yeah,
sometimes
it could have been smelling me or you know, give a hoot about a pigeon, you know, but it just like, okay, let nature take its course. She makes a dog, she makes a dog. If she doesn't, you just hunt the legs, feed off of them, and hopefully make it. And that's kind of what I had to do.
Yeah, and I think it's, I don't know. I would say sometimes with that type of scenario, it might be a pressure thing, you know, where the wild birds, it's all fun. There's no man-made issues, no man scent, nothing like that, and a little bit more exciting.
And I think I was doing it in hay fields and short grass, and that probably wasn't as fun as it is going out into the prairie or into the CRP and just running wild. And I think that might have had a little bit scenario to do with it too.
Yeah, and she probably made some more mistakes out there that you weren't around. And probably had a little bit of fun with it. You know, they probably put some pheasants in there and thought this is great. You know, and that over there is not quite as fun.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but she hadn't seen wild birds or anything, and just like, that bird's right there. Why aren't you pointing at it? You smell it. I know you're looking at it, but
I
then
bet
the first wild bird she run up on, kapow.
I bet she's still better on wild birds than she is on pen-raised birds as far as style and intensity and stuff like that.
Now, you know, I don't see it any difference.
Really?
I mean, she doesn't hunt as hard on the pen raise because she knows that. I mean, I go down where we guide. She doesn't hunt half as hard as she does when she's a wild, you know, when we're out running. But she's been through the program. She knows the rules, you know, and you know, I have a way different hunting style when it's just me and her than versus when, you know, Wade and I are like, we have a client out there. You can't be throwing mud behind you. You got to chill out, stay close.
Yeah. When I'm wild bird hunting, we cover lots of ground.
Let's go.
I let them rip. I mean, but when I'm guiding, I do hack on them a little bit more, and they're probably like, oh. But, you know, we wild bird hunt, I'll let a dog run 200 yards. I'll let them run a whole field. There's times if we run at the edge of a cornfield or a bean field, there's not a ton of cover. I'll stay at the truck, and I'll just turn them loose. And I'll let them run the whole thing, come all the way back around. If they go on point, I go to them.
Yeah.
You know, big CRP fields, you can't do that, obviously, but you know, some of the places we hunt where there's just fence lines and stuff like that, I'll let them rip. So, yeah, that could be a little bit of difference there too. Like some dogs like that more of a, you know, a line running type of dog. They like that more, and it's more their style, and you're not cramping their style.
Yeah.
So,
one question before we always have at the end of our podcast, we have a favorite dog story, but one thing I want to know is what are the 3 most important tools that you take, whether you're hunting or training when you go hunting?
Myself, well, shot collar. I mean, that's pretty important. A whistle, and I don't know what the third thing would be.
This one always stumps when I ask people this question.
Whistle, shot collar. Well, I guess a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you guide, though, you get used to not carrying a gun, you know, and Thomas and I have talked about this a lot, you know, and when I first started doing it a little bit, I didn't know how I was going to really like it, you know, but I found that you could really dedicate most of your attention to the dog and what the dog is doing when you don't have to worry about a gun and, you know, and carrying it. It just frees you up to pay more attention, and you, it's amazing what you pick up from that dog by giving it that kind of attention, as you mentioned too. So,
Well, you know, with training dogs, I shoot so many birds.
Yeah.
When I go wild bird hunting, I really don't. I don't care to shoot. I mean, I enjoy shooting birds just like anybody else, but it's anymore. Sometimes you hunt. I've spent $1,000 in a couple of days and shot one bird, but I didn't go for that part. I went for the dogs and watching them run and do those things. So, if it was about killing birds, we'd probably all find something a little different to do.
Yeah,
There won't be any left.
No, it'd be it's more about the dogs.
so I know you've had so many dogs in your career, and it might be hard to pull out that one story or that one thing that comes to memory. But if you had that one story that you could tell and share with us, it's your favorite. What would it be? What comes to mind? Could be a first retrieve. Could be that dog that you saved all that money for. I mean, that'd be the way I'd be going. But there was probably that one incident someplace that just sticks in your mind and you'll never forget it.
Like your
What is it?
fireside story, like first thing if you're talking bragging dogs.
Well, I don't think this is a brag, but it's one of the things that I'll always remember. I was hunting one of my cousin's farms, and that mag dog was that dog I saved that money for. And she was probably the best wild bird dog I ever had, but I hunted that dog every day. I mean, on wild birds. We had them and whatnot, but I was hunting my cousins, and we used to use those old sonic beepers. Remember them orange and white beepers? We had to count them. Is she really on point or just running? And she was pointing up on this fence line, and I ran in there, and me and a friend of mine was with me. We went in to flush a bird. 2 coyotes come out. We shot both coyotes, and she still was pointing a rooster pheasant. And we flushed that pheasant and shot that pheasant.
She stood through that whole thing.
The whole thing. And them coyotes had to be very, very close because they were close enough. We shot them with 20 gauges and killed them. So I don't know if they were coming into her, the beeper, or they were coming into the pheasant. But that's a story I'll never, ever. And she just stood all through it and looked like $1 million.
That always goes to show you always trust the dog.
Yeah. That dog, though, she would point some things you didn't want, like turkeys, some deer. She did do some.
But she held it.
She did.
She held it. That's awesome. Well, we appreciate your time, and it's been fun talking to you about your dogs and your training stuff. I've learned a lot tonight, and I could keep going for a lot longer, and I'm sure everybody that's listening has enjoyed and picking up some information. You know, like you said, for seeing as many dogs as you have, you know, you've learned a lot, and I think that's kind of what we have talked about on the phone before too. Is that every day you learn something new, and you can learn from other trainers. You can learn from the next dog that comes in. So, what's your best advice to somebody that's wanting to get a hunting dog and really is new to it? What's your best advice?
Spend some time looking for what you want. Maybe hunt with some dogs that, see if that's the type of breed of dog you want, what you're going to do with it, if you want it in your house, those type of things. That would be, some things I'd look into for what breed I get. Talk to as many people as you can, and don't give up once you start working them. They're going to try you. Not everything's easy.
It's important to talk with the breeder as well. Ask as many questions as you can to make sure that's what you want.
Yeah, and believe what he says. He tells you these dogs are high strung. Oh no, it'd be fine at my place. Everybody breeds for different things. If you're talking to a guy and he tells you, that's probably what he wants you to, so.
Well, because the breeder wants you to be happy. He doesn't want to get that phone call
No.
to say what's wrong with this dog or this isn't the dog that you told me it was going to be, right?
Correct.
So, well, Bryan, it's been great. We'll have to maybe do this again. I think maybe we could talk about some other aspects of training in the future and some other podcasts, if that's something that you'd be open to doing.
I enjoy it.
I don't know if we'll get you clear back over here to the studio again, but
My winters are a little open.
but
If you invite me to go hunting.
I
There
think
you
we
go.
could. I
There
think
you
that's what's in the back of my mind. Maybe a hunting and then an after show.
Yeah.
So it's been fun, everybody. We've been talking to Bryan Camper from Swift Rock Kennels in Walnut, Illinois. And so if you're looking for some puppies or you're looking for anything, have information or questions about dog training, he is your guy, and he's got a web page, and you can check him out. He's got some really cool videos as well. And so look him up, and if you have anything, and we will try to get him back on again, and we'll talk about some more stuff that we're going to do.
And you'll be able to see all his information in the description of the show. So
That's right.
all the descriptions are in the show. All the links that you need to find, and we appreciate you share the show. Let people know about us. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Facebook, all the major.
Subscribe.
Ring that
That's-
little bell. You'll
it's
get
all
a
about-
notification.
It's
that
just kind of
we're
like
on.
the dog pointing birds. It's about numbers, just like Bryan
Yep.
mentioned. It's about some numbers. So please subscribe, share it with your friends. You get some great information from people like Bryan on the podcast. So help us out,
And it's free.
and most of all, take somebody hunting.
And keep their noses in the wind.